In November 2021, I published a review of Freeride, a game by Friedemann Friese from his own 2F Spiele that was licensed by a number of other companies. In Freeride, you are trying to build train routes across Europe to visit as many different cities as possible. In a review that I wrote after playing 9 times on a review copy from 2F Spiele, I called the game Ticket to Transamerica because you are taking elements of 2 classic train designs, Ticket to Ride and Transamerica, and mashing them together Reese's Peanut Butter Cup style into a delicious combination. As in Transamerica, you are building a shared network of train routes with other players, but it's not the same as in that game. And as in Ticket to Ride, you are trying to go from one city to another in order to score points, but again, not the same. It is its own thing. And in November 2024, Friese released Freeride USA, which is pretty much the same game as Freeride, but now you are building routes across the United States instead of across Europe. There's a number of graphic design changes to this, and one rule change that will play out differently than in the original Freeride. If you're not familiar with that game, you can watch the overview of this one, and you'll understand how both games work. If you have played the original, maybe you want to jump to here to see the differences between the original game and this one, and then we can talk about that a bit more after I show you how the game works. Here are the components of Freeride USA, with the game board showing a map of the United States with 45 cities highlighted on it, with these cities grouped into blocks of 5 by color and symbol. You have 3 decks of 45 cards, with each city appearing once in each deck. You have some rail tokens, coins, engines in 5 colors, hammers in 5 colors, and ownership tokens, these staple-looking things. You are going to start somewhere on the board. We'll talk about how in a moment. So everyone will start somewhere in different cities, and then you begin play. You have 3 different options available to you on your turn. You can move your train, but you start with no track on the board. So let's skip that for the moment. You can build track. In a 5-player game, each player has 8 pieces of track, and you can build it from where you are. Right? This is the only thing I have access to. It's my hub to begin with. I have 2 building points with which to put track on the board, and most spaces take only 1 building point to fill. There are some mountain spaces here that take 2 points. I'll show those in a moment. So when I build them, I put my ownership tokens on them. Maybe the yellow player builds here, and the blue player builds here. And now by building here, we're connected. We both share St. Louis, and so now this is considered one network, and the blue player and I can both build anywhere off of this connection. If the white player builds here, they have a second building point, and they put this halfway to show it's half built, and they mark it and they use their hammer to show this is in progress. The next time that the white player builds, they must build here. Anyone else can build here as well, but it's still owned by the white player. So a purple player doesn't want to build here, even if they do want to go to Denver, because then you're only helping white. So maybe purple goes here and starts here. We'll do it this way. Okay, so now I can build off blue, have routes to Atlanta and Birmingham. And again, mark it. So yellow player builds. Won't worry about them at the moment. Let's say everyone takes their turn. You can travel. And when you travel, you can move 2 spaces. Everyone starts with the engine and 1 car. This shows that you have 2 building points to put track on the board, and you have 2 movement points. So I can move to Omaha, and I can move back to Kansas City. That would be 2 movements, and it would accomplish probably nothing, but I could do that. I can go to St. Louis, and I can go over here to Knoxville, but this is owned by the blue player. So if I want to travel over the blue player's track, I must give them a coin. Each coin you have at the end of the game is worth 3 points. So I'm giving up 3 points in order to nationalize their track. You can think of me as paying funds to the government. The government then pays the blue player for the use of their track, and now this is nationalized and not owned by anyone. So the blue player did some work, got 3 points out of it, got a coin that they can spend later to nationalize someone else's track, or take one other function, or save it for points at the end of the game. And now I move to Knoxville. So you're moving across the board in order to satisfy the tickets that you will get. Again, we'll talk about those in a moment. The final thing that's available to you, if you build down and you have 0 or 1 pieces of track left, then you can get 5 pieces of track. And that's your whole turn. So turns are quick. I put down track, I move my train, I get more track, that's it. If you want, on a turn that you're building, let's say I'm at this point and I want to build again. I want to go to Savannah and down to Jacksonville. I have only 1 piece of track. On the building phase, when I'm building, with my 2 building points, I can put this down, mark it, and spend the coin to get 5 pieces of track and then continue building. So I don't have to spend a turn getting track pieces, but I have now spent a coin, which is 3 points. How valuable is that 3 points worth? How valuable is the momentum of what you're building? Because if I don't build to Jacksonville, the blue player could, because we're all connected. And the yellow player could go here on their first build action, and now they're part of this network, and they could build to Jacksonville. And if I'm trying to get to Jacksonville, now I have to pay them, or I have to build an alternate route, which will take 1, 2, 3 turns to get there. So, timing is a big element of this game. That's it for the actions. Put track on the board, move your train up to 2 spaces. Doesn't matter the length of the track, you just move from one city to another city to another city. There you go. Or get track. That's it. Now, as for what you're trying to do, at the start of the game, you're going to put out 3 sets of 3 cards. Yeah, let's clear this off. And if I'm the first player, I am going to choose my first route by looking at these cards. You can choose to start in the top card and go to the middle, or start in the middle and go to the bottom. Those are the only options available to you. I can't go Los Angeles to San Diego, which would be nice because they're really close together. I can't go San Diego to Cheyenne. You can only do top to middle, middle to bottom. Those are your choices. So I have 6 routes available to me at the start of play. I choose one. Let's say I go... don't know if I like any of these at the moment, but you got to do something. So Oklahoma City to Fargo. I start in Oklahoma City. I take these off the board. I have my engine in front of me. And I start in Oklahoma City, and I'm going to Fargo. This Philadelphia, out of the game. So no longer an option in deck 1. The next player are going to turn over 2 more sets of 3. And so now they have 8 choices available to them. So going first, you get the best of a small pool, and you keep adding more and more options for the later players. And then eventually, once the game starts, you'll have 6 sets of 3 cards, always available for future choices. Right now I have 1 train car. It can hold 1 route. I must deliver this route before I can start another one. So now I have a goal for where I want to go, and it's public. Everyone knows I want to go to Fargo, which means I want to build up here. I start with 8 pieces of track. So my turns probably are going to be build this, build that, and then move to, drop off Fargo. Right? These will be marked with ownership tokens. Other people may claim those routes, and then I have to pay them or I have to go somewhere else. But that's how the game works, is I am trying to get to Fargo. Once I do that, I deliver this, just put it face down in a pile. And now I can pick up something else. If Billings to El Paso is still here, well, maybe in a future turn, I do this. I spend the turn to get 5 track, or maybe if I think someone else is going to claim this first, I spend a coin to get 5 pieces of track. I have to mark this here. Finish this on my next turn. And then I can go to Billings, pick this up, Billings to El Paso, and spend my second movement to go back. Albuquerque's thrown away. And I'm already pretty close to El Paso, or at least I have track. Again, this would all be marked with green, unless I had to nationalize somebody else's. And now I can boom, 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 build track to get to El Paso. So the first part of the game is a lot of route building, a lot of trying to claim ownership of particular areas. Often someone will just take all of Florida, or they'll be off in the Pacific Northwest all their own, and it's just a sea of one color of ownership tokens. Maybe that's good, maybe not. It all depends upon how everything else comes out here. Once you get through the first deck, right, and you have to start drawing cards from the second deck, you add another train car. And now you can have 2 routes underway at once. So you're trying to get everything to work together. If the situation were a little bit different here, and we're back this way, this were still an option. I might want to build to Duluth, or maybe someone else has, and I go Billings here for Billings to El Paso, and then 1, 2, Duluth to Fort Worth. They're both going almost the same area, so I have really made this more efficient. Going down here, I have 2 loads to deliver relatively close together. I pick them up close together, so I haven't wasted much time. But what you're trying to do is ideally visit as many different cities as possible. So as you get into deck 2 and deck 3, you're going to start seeing cities again. You can look at all the cities you visited, but maybe a route comes up and you're like, fine, I'll just get it again because I'm sort of going that way anyway. Or it's a route in which I have not been to Sacramento, but I have been to Minneapolis, but I'll get Sacramento, a new city. So let's get going. When deck 2 runs out and you start drawing from deck 3, everyone flips their engine over, and you still have 2 building points. You have 2 loads that you can carry, but when you move your train, you're now moving 3 cities at a time, or up to 3 cities. You don't have to move 3, but you want to do as much as possible. You always want to use 2 building points. You want to move as much as you can. You want to carry multiple loads in general so that you can keep doing things. If you got an empty car, that means you're not doing anything at that moment or not working towards a delivery. You want to deliver, pick up, deliver, pick up, deliver, pick up, and so on. Okay. You keep going until deck 3 is out, and then once deck 3 is empty, on a turn, you can choose, after moving your train, to retire. You just remove your train from the track. If you have loads still in your carrying cars here, you throw them away. Right? You have abandoned your post, and those lots of goods are just discarded. If these are empty, because maybe I move, and for my last movement, I do that delivery to Fort Worth, and now I've emptied my train, I can retire and immediately get a gold coin. All right? I get a watch of sorts, a golden watch that is worth 3 points. And on each of my subsequent turns, I will get a coin. So everyone retires at their own pace when they're ready to step out. As long as you stay in the game, each other person is getting a coin on their turn. You're giving them 3 points. So ideally, whatever you're doing, you're going to make more than that. Once everyone is retired, then the game is over, and you count your points. And your points are going to be 5 points for every city that you have visited, right, based on one card. So if I visit these, this is now 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And then if I visit Billings again, that's worth only 2 points. The first time you go is 5. Each time after that is 2. That's why you really want to visit as many different cities as possible. I don't get much from going to Billings again, but I get something. And each coin is 3 points. So when you're adding up, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. Put a coin on every city that you've already visited, and that's 5 as well. It makes it easy to add up, and then whoever has the most points wins. So you want an efficient network that you can visit as many cities as possible, paying out as few coins as you can to nationalize other people's routes, trying to get coins from them. Maybe you buy a route that you know they desperately need so that they'll hand you a coin. 3 points for you for 1 building point action sometimes. Okay, that's the goal. Now, what is different in this game from Free Ride? I already mentioned one thing. You have cities that are color-coded. So in Free Ride, all the cities were kind of beige. You had no color markings on here. And so it's sometimes difficult to pick out exactly what the route was. But when you're looking at options here, let's lay out some new options. When you're looking at options here, you can immediately see, okay, brown to green, and then green to aqua. And it gives you a sense of what you're doing. Even if not exactly, you can be like, okay, brown to green, that's pretty close. Green to aqua, not as close. And then you can look more specifically, Richmond and New York. Oh, hey, that's that. All right, New York to Phoenix. That's not so good. Okay, the colors really help you identify, in general, where things are and more easily assess how difficult or easy a route is going to be. So you got the colors and the symbols to help make that happen. Another change in Free Ride, all the city names were in the native language of that country. So if it could be difficult, you don't recognize a city name because you're looking at it in Danish or in a Romanized Russian for Moskva. So it could be more challenging to know where everything is. Here, all the names are in English for cities in the United States. Okay. A more important change, so that's a graphic change to help you spot the routes more easily and see where you're going and just find the locations. But another change, see if I can flip up a combination, nope, that makes that happen. You have all the purplish cities and the dark blue ones have this half coin on them. Everything on the West Coast or semi-West Coast, because Salt Lake City is not really West Coast. But anyway, purple and blue have this half coin. Everything on the East Coast, the green and brown, has this other half coin. And, now I can fudge it. If you flip over a route like this, where essentially you were going coast to coast, Orlando to Portland, the coin halves match together and you put 2 coins on this route. And if you take the Orlando to Portland route, you get these 2 coins. So you're picking up 6 points at the same time you're taking on this obligation to do a very long route. Orlando to Portland. That's about as long as you can get. So it's going to take a while, but you get 6 points. Will help you nationalize routes. All right, maybe buy train track to build in the middle and just keep going so you can get there faster. That's something. In Free Ride, you had 9 locations around the board, around the perimeter of Europe that had 2 coins sitting in them. And so if you built into Moscow, you got those 2 coins. If you built down into, I think, Istanbul, you got 2 coins. They were just waiting there and then they were emptied and gone. Here, the number of coins entering the game varies a lot, depending upon how many of these coast-to-coast routes come up. It makes a big difference, because sometimes you just keep throwing coins out of the game because you're buying track. And then suddenly you find you've got 1 coin, and there are no more coins entering, and no one's going over your routes, and now you're kind of hamstrung because you've got one thing you can nationalize. So where can you go at that point? What can you do? You can really put yourself in a hole by running out of coins that way. And yet, everyone still does it pretty much all the time, because you see moments where you just got to take that action. I want to build in there before someone else does. I got to get this route done so I can empty my goods car and pick up something else. So the number of coins coming in varies a lot. Now, when this comes out, if this came out in Age 1 or Deck 1, which this is right now, no one's going to take Orlando to Portland to begin with. At least I haven't seen anyone do that yet, because you are committing to a very long route, which means you're just going to be building, right? You can't build anywhere else other than Orlando until you connect to someone else. And then maybe you build off there, and then you build up here. You keep going over these 2 building point routes and eventually get up to Portland. And then finally you can deliver, but you're going, I move 2, etc. That's a lot of turns for 2 cards. So often what happens is these will sit there for a very long time. If someone takes Portland and Knoxville, there's no coins for that, right? These 2 coins are only for these 2, but someone may take Portland and Knoxville anyway, and then the coins are thrown away, Orlando's thrown away. But generally this will sit here for a very long time, and then something else will come up, right? So Salt Lake City to Richmond. I can go to one and I can go back to the other. Or ideally they come out in this order. And now you're talking, because now you can do 2 at once. You can't change the order though. If they come out this way, it's not as exciting, because now you can't pair the 2 of them. So the randomness of the cities and how they come out, where people start, where they build, very dynamic every game. One other change, if I remember correctly. Nope, not a change. As in Free Ride, there are 15 cards in each deck that have this 2-player marker. You take out all of those cities. So you remove 15 cards from Deck 1, Deck 2, Deck 3, 1 of each of the cities. So then there's only 2 copies of each city in all the decks. So the game is shorter. There's fewer cards. Makes it harder sometimes to pick up a city, because maybe Knoxville gets thrown away and there's only 1 Knoxville left. Maybe it gets thrown away again. So that changes as well, the nature of the game with the 2 players. But otherwise, those are the only changes with Free Ride USA. The colors, the symbols, the names of the cities, all in English, instead of a Romanized version or transliterated version, and the coins coming in. Otherwise, gameplay is the same. I've played Free Ride USA 4 times on a review copy from 2F Spiele, and I love it as much as the original Free Ride, which is no surprise because this is pretty much Free Ride. The graphical changes are greatly appreciated because they do make it easier to play the game. Once you have played once or twice, you're familiar with the colors, you can just look at the cards in general and see purple to aqua and aqua to green, and you know, okay, northwest to southwest, or southern border, and then southern border to northeast. Do I want either of those? And if I think it's possible, if I'm going somewhere in that direction, I can look more closely, which city is it exactly? I can look across at what everyone else has, and I can see where they're going. They've got orange, they've got yellow, they've also got yellow. So they're going to drop those off and then probably try to pick up something that's close. So can I beat them to something? Can I make it so they drop off their yellow, but I just picked up the one thing that's available for them, and now they've got to spend time going elsewhere, wasting their time, hopefully. I say all this having, I think, not won the game once. I love the dynamics of the game, the interaction with everyone building this network together and competing for the available routes. Often you will want the top and middle of a route and someone else wants the middle and bottom. So you have to watch where they are and see if they're going to get that before you, because that will happen. If they get the middle bottom, well, the top is gone. There's nothing connected to it anymore, and so you lose out. So you're competing very directly trying to get cities. If you can't keep track of where people have been, They've already been to Salt Lake City. Do they care about getting a second one? Maybe they just want to go somewhere else where it'll be more profitable for them. But who knows? Again, I don't know necessarily because I have not done well at this game. It's kind of interesting because I like it so much. It's really my style of game, that interactive nature, the head-to-head competition of claiming routes, claiming spaces on the board, trying to mooch money out of people by taking a route that they want. It all appeals to me, all of that. And yet I haven't been able to figure out what's the best way to play. Do you want to build a huge network first? Do you want to hold out for a short route that's going to work perfectly with where you're going? Is it more important to block other people? What do you want to do? Do you just want to save coins and never nationalize anything and build all your own route? I don't know. So maybe that's part of why I find it really intriguing. Like, the game is not solved for me in any way. I don't get it, but I find the challenge really appealing. It's really interesting too because it's a 2 to 5 player game, and the points scale very differently depending on the player counts, because with 3, 4, and 5 players, there's no changes in the deck. So a winning score in a 5-player game could be the lowest score in a 3-player game because fewer people are claiming those same number of cards. So it's hard to assess where you are. Again, having played 13 times total over the 2 games, I don't have a good sense. I'll be going along and think I have a decent number of cities and I'm doing well, and then I find out someone smokes me by 30 points, and I'm just like, how did that happen? No clue. It's baffling. But maybe we try again? I haven't found anyone who really loves it as much as I do, which is disappointing because then I get to play it more. It's always the challenge with me where I get something and I want to really feel like I've internalized it and I get a sense of what I'm doing to it and how to play well, and then want to play against other people who are playing well. And then that's when the game sort of really begins. Always the problem with getting all these new games, and sort of why I'm covering Freeride USA now, even though I did that review of the original game a little over 3 years ago. Why talk about this game again when it's pretty much the same as the original? Well, one, it's not the same. There are slight differences. The amount of coins coming in the game, maybe it's for a different feel for how the game plays out. And two, I still haven't become good at it. I still haven't felt like I've mastered it. So I want to go back and play more. I want to do more of it. I want to dive in, get really comfortable instead of just sampling it and moving on to something else, which is what I do with so many of the games that I cover in these videos, because I probably don't want a video about the same game every single time. But this time I snuck it in. So there you go. Override of Freeride USA. That is better than the original, unless maybe you're European and you want to play there, which, cool, do that. Or choose this. Your call.